Yeah, I remember I interviewed Scott Adams. He's the artist behind the cartoon Dilbert. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Right. This has been a mainstay in the newspaper world for decades at this point. Very rich guy. I went to really nice house, has money, and so forth. And he kind of broke it down. He had a bunch of New York Times best-selling books on top of it, and he kind of broke it down in an interesting type of fashion that people will say, well, you're going to be successful in something you're really passionate at, and you have to find your passion. But he kind of said, well, you're passionate about the things that do well
Yeah.
and make you money.
Yeah.
And people seem to like. You
Yeah.
become more passionate as more energy builds around these things.
Yeah.
Like, you said that passion is actually overrated.
Yeah. So if you talk to a billionaire, as often happens, when a billionaire gets interviewed, somebody's going to say, what was your secret to success? And what do these billionaires always say? Whether it's Warren Buffett, Mark Zuckerberg, Richard Branson, they all say the same thing. They say passion. Follow your passion. That's what makes everything work. Here's the problem with that. Think what else they could have said instead of that answer. Mm-hmm. Could they say, well, I'm a billionaire because I'm smarter than poor people?
Right.
You can't say that, even if it's true.
Right.
Because in at least two of those guys, that might be true, right? Buffett and Zuckerberg are way smarter than ordinary people.
Yeah.
They can't say, I worked hard, because their gardener works harder than they do, right? It's not helping them become a billionaire. So if you look at all the answers they can actually give, they can't say luck, because then nobody wants to work with them. It's like, well, you just got lucky once. Like, what are the odds that happens again?
Yeah.
So they say the only democratic thing they can say, passion. And you know why they say that? Because you think you can get that.
You could just be so passionate about something when no one cares about it, and it's literally making no money.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Oh, totally.
And
like it's
yeah.
ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's bad. It's bad advice for people to follow their passions. Like,
yeah.
Just because you're passionate about something. I was on a show recently, and this kid goes into his pitch about his business and why he loves it, and he loves this idea, and I'm like, yeah, bro, it doesn't matter if you love it. If nobody else needs it, wants it, or will pay for it, it don't matter.
Yeah. And I almost feel that knowing when to quit is more important than knowing not to quit. Because you could very easily just keep hammering your head for years on something that's never going to go anywhere. But to be able to just say, look, I'm cutting my losses. This is going nowhere.
Yeah.
I'm going to go focus on something else is extremely important. More important, I feel.
Yeah, that's not quitting, though. That's all that's doing is shifting your obsession from this thing's not working, shifting that obsession and that energy and that massive action to a channel that can work. And everybody's required to make a shift along the way. The vehicle you start on will not be the vehicle you arrive on.
Right, because you said your career should be a religious mission.
Yeah, and I should go through a series of evolutions so that I'm not, I might not show up on a horse if I started in 1800.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at VladTV, we are here to document culture and important figures during this time for generations to come. This is what we do. So, for example, one of my favorite actors was John Witherspoon. He starred in the Friday movies and the Boondocks and so forth. I interviewed him last year, and it was basically like a documentary about his life. He told his life story from beginning to end. He passed away a few weeks ago. And this is the only piece, the only interview he has where he actually tells about his life. There's been other interviews. He's talked about his movies here and there, but to say, here's where I was born, here's how I grew up, this is how I got my first break, here's how my career progressed, here's where I am now, this is why I'm still working at 76 years old, and so forth. That doesn't exist outside of this VladTV interview. And this is really like what I feel is the religious mission of what we're trying to do. So I don't really care how much money gets made right now. I don't care whether people like it, don't like it. There's a higher mission in what we're trying to do here. And I feel that most successful people, this is what they do.
Yeah. And then you got to find some things that pay the bills in the meantime. So the
Right.
fact that you're doing that, nobody else is going to do it because the networks can't do that TV because they feel like it's too promotional to an individual. And the fact that you're doing that, man, one, it's gonna provide long-term value to society, and number two, people should get behind you and support you. Look, I'm the one that said, hey, I'm coming back to New York. Let's meet up because I do know you add value.
Yeah, I mean, I looked it up. Almost 4 million people combined watched our last interview.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, pretty big numbers.
It's a lot of people, man.
Yeah. And you know, when you look at successful people,
I grew up in a town of 40,000, Vlad, so that's like 100x.
right, exactly. When you look at the most successful people, the more successful someone is, the longer their timeline is. Meaning that when you look at the millionaires and the billionaires, they're looking at what happens past their lifetime.
Yeah.
When you look at the middle class, they might think a year or two in advance. And when you look at the lower class, they're trying to make it to next week. Would that be a fair assessment based on what you saw?
I remember when I was worried about one night. So I remember when I'm like, oh, am I going to be able to pay the rent this month? I was 23 years old. Am I going to be able to pay the rent? Am I going to be late again? And then I remember when I was 25 thinking, okay, I think I'm going to actually make $100,000 this year. And I was starting to think in years now. And so again, that goes back to that evolution thing. Now it's like, wow, what are people going to know me for? They're going to know me for the money I made, or they're going to know me because I was a good dude. I didn't rip anybody off. I had a great career, employed a bunch of people. They felt good about it. That I left some advice on this planet. And so I think you're right. The more you get away from money problems, the more you're able to look into the future. And this is why Steve Jobs, at the end of Steve Jobs' career, he says money doesn't matter. But that's not what he was saying when he was trying to freaking put some money together.
Right.
When he was trying to keep Apple in the game, he went to his at that time enemy, okay, which was Bill Gates, and said, Bill, we need to do a deal. I need to borrow some money. So here's a guy that had to put away a lifelong grudge to keep his thing in play. He had to sell a little part of his soul so that he could be the Steve Jobs and make Apple the company he knew it could be. And he had to give up on this old idea, one, that he wouldn't depend on his old adversary, and number two, that he would give up the idea that Apple would always be just this piece of hardware. And that's when iPhone happened. He hung in there. So these people don't quit. When you're just like, I'm paying bills this week, you've quit on the dream. And this is what people in all countries can't afford to do right now. No matter how hard it gets, you can't quit on the little bit of dream you got, the little bit of light you got on your dream. Because I'm proof right now that anybody, if you don't quit, if you don't screw people over, if you don't rip people off, if you add more value, if you keep showing up and you keep, learning from the right people and you don't throw the towel in, man, you can do anything you want. That is still true today, regardless of how bad it is for you right now at this moment.